Today we're going to talk about differentiation through the lens of tiered learning experiences. Tiered learning experiences is a way to plan appropriately challenging activities for all levels of thinking. You want to make sure that all the activities that you have stated in your lesson plan are practicing the same standard, just at varying degrees of challenging activities. The first way that we're going to look at, and usually the most common of tiered learning experiences, is levels of thinking. There are 3 different levels of thinking. The first one is the entry level, or what some people might call Tier 1. This is your lower Bloom's taxonomy entry level students who might need a little bit more support. The second level is your more advanced level, or sometimes called Tier 2. These students can do a little bit more on their own. They are also a little bit more advanced on the Bloom's taxonomy. Last, you have your extension level, or Tier 3. This is your extremely advanced and usually tagged students who need a little bit more of a challenge. And with this extension level, you're working on the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy. Here is an example of what a tiered lesson plan might look like. You have your required standard on the left, and you want to remember that the standard stays the same for all the students. Then you move horizontally across the chart, and you move to your entry-level activities, or your Tier 1. Then you move to your advanced activities, or Tier 2. And then your most challenging activities are on the far right of your chart. When you're planning your most challenging activities, they should not just be more work. You want to tier them out by trying to use trigger words from the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy. So you're looking for words that allow kids to analyze the material, evaluate the material, or do something creative with that material. In the example here, the students are working on reading and writing standards through studying the Titanic. The required standard is in the strand of writing and the concept of publishing, and their objective is they want to prepare writing in a format to an audience and purpose. Your entry-level students are going to read a newspaper talking about the Titanic and just record 6 factual errors that were reported. Then they have to correct those errors and, of course, cite their resources. Moving to a more advanced activity, students would create a list of 10 changes that were put in place after the sinking of the Titanic so that other ships could avoid similar disasters. Then they had to explain the direct connection, the mistakes made in the sinking of the Titanic. You can tell that this activity requires students to go a little bit further in their thinking and really analyze those mistakes and explain why those errors or mistakes were important for the sinking of the Titanic. And finally, your most challenging activity is that students have to write a historical document detailing important events in the lives of 3 survivors from the Titanic. So here you're challenging your students to look at the Titanic through different perspectives and really imagining what it might be like for those people who lived through the Titanic and ended up surviving, and how that would impact their regular life, and how activities that they did through the rest of their lives would be impacted by that survival or that experience. There are other ways to tier assignments, and we're going to take a look at those. The first way is to tier by complexity. This just means that the complexity of the assignment is different. So your Tier 1 might be a little less complex, or asking your students to do a little bit less with the material. And as you move through the tiers, you're asking them to do more and more. The next way to tier an assignment is to tier by resources. This means that you are in 3 groups, and each group is using a different resource at their level. That might look like a story or a problem at those various levels. The next way to tier an assignment is to tier by outcome. This means that all students are using the same materials. They are just using those materials to accomplish different tasks. For example, they all might be using pattern blocks, but what they do with those pattern blocks is different. Another way to tier is to tier by process. This means that all students have the same outcome, but the process they use to get to the outcome is different. An example might be the question of what are the important characteristics of a superhero? Your Tier 1 students might just create a chart of superheroes and what those superheroes did to get the status of a superhero. Your Tier 2 students might compare and contrast two different superheroes, looking at what characteristics or activities that contributed to their status as superhero. And finally, your extension level or Tier 3 might be to make a list of the characteristics that superheroes exhibit, and then to list those characteristics from least to most important. A final way that you can tier is to tier by product. This means that you could tier by multiple intelligences, you could tier by learning modalities. One of the ways in differentiation that we can look at is the curriculum differentiation chart. And this chart is a way to tier by learning modality. In your tiering by students who are auditory, students who learn better visually, and students who are a little bit more tactile or kinesthetic. I hope this presentation has been helpful in helping you learn how to tier out your assignments for all levels of students. Thank you.